to understand that, you need to understand who you're hiring. And that only happens with a conversation. What is valuable to them? Where are they at in their life? Do they value money over family? What is it? And be flexible with what you're offering.
I think the most important thing that we look at here is that the hiring process is a two-way process. It's as much as you selling the opportunity. This is how you get great employees, right? You sell the opportunity to work at your company with you and the culture that you've built, but you also need them to sell themselves as someone that should be working there. So don't just think of like, you need to sell yourself. You need to tell me why you need to be here. You need to say, well, this is why I think you should want to be here.
We're all part of this whole money game. This whole...
Welcome back to another episode of Beers and Business. I'm Abe Dearmer, CEO of Appsembler.
No, I'm Andrew Martin, CEO of Teamgate CRM, and we're back for another episode. What are we up to? 19?
19, episode 19.
We'll have to plan something for episode 20, something big.
Yeah, we're getting shit-faced. So I got two beers today. First one is the Dub Vegas. Nice little tradie on the front. And the second one I've got is the Black Horn with a rhino on there, the Black Rhino. So I've got a dark ale and a mid-strength lager. I think I'm going to go the mid-strength lager first because that makes sense. Start mid. Get
Looks
into
like
it.
you. He's got your haircut, I think, on the front of
Whoa,
that can.
listen to it, mate. Yeah, mate, inspired, art inspired. No, his hair's a bit long on the sides, mate. But this one here is just your everyday drinking beverage from the Devil's Hollow. And I guess it's their version of Forex. Canoe beer. Looks close to water. Probably tastes better than Forex. But this is our everyday lager and flagship beer brewed with Atlas and Cara Pils malts. It may be light on colour, but it's big on drinkability. There you go. Our label is inspired by Dubbo's awesome tradie network, because there's nothing better than kicking back at beer o'clock after a hard day on the tools with one of Dubbo's finest. There you go, mate.
Nice.
Get that into your
taste.
Yeah, it smells like Forex too.
It'd be good if I could see it, but you got it in a
This is
glass.
This is my coach's award from the Bathurst Bulldogs last year, mate.
Hey.
For someone who tries hard. Not the most skillful, but someone who tries hard,
Should I use my Sportsman of the Year cup that I got at the mighty 4th Regiment a few years ago?
Yeah. Do you know how many people had to pay to get you that, mate?
You're one of them. You're one of the,
Yeah, I know.
one of the key voters.
Yeah, I know. You know how much you had to pay me to influence the room?
Mate, it's not often an officer gets the sporting awards. So I'm sure that there was some convincing.
Mate. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, today I've got a new brewery and one we might try moving forward. It's not on the Sunshine Coast.
Sponsor us, you pricks.
It's in Brisbane, so it's down the road. But Aether Brewing, so I believe it's down in Northgate. So it's actually near where I was born, near Redcliffe. And today I am trying their seasonal release.
Look at that.
Peanut butter stout.
Man, that label has got what is it meant to be? Is that it's a bird?
So each different release has its own original art. So you can see there, they've shouted out the artist.
Oh yeah, cool.
And each release has its own specific artwork. We've said in the past we like simple branding, but also pretty cool you can jump on their website and read the story behind the art for each can as well. Now, little mishap on my behalf. When I did buy this, I didn't read the back of the label. 2.1 standard drinks, so a pretty heavy stout, and
Mate, it's peanut butter, so it should be fine.
Nice and dark, and it smells like peanut butter.
For a peanut butter, that's a really dark one, yeah.
Really dark.
What cup you got there, mate?
It's my Forrest Gump cup.
And
that
I have to talk to Charlotte to arrange for that one to get broken.
That's a mix of, I'd say dark chocolate. And
are you looking up the taste? You can't say. Oh, it's a mix of dark chocolate and peanut butter.
Yeah. Formerly known as Creature of the Night, a peanut butter stout is a friendly dessert beer with a lighter body. 2.1 standard drinks, I wouldn't say is a dessert beer. Flavors of peanut butter, caramel, and chocolate dominate the palate with a subtle finish of malt.
Well, if you want a nightcap, mate, nice. You want to finish the night, you finish it off with a 2.1 standard drink.
Have a 4-pack and you'll sleep like a baby.
After that, buddy.
You'll probably piss yourself, but
oh,
is what it is. Wouldn't be the first time for you.
What are you trying to say?
Nothing.
You're not going to tell anyone that, mate. Back when we used to share beds,
Last week.
Last week, yeah. So today we're going to go through our normal weekly wrap-up, and then we're going to talk about hiring. And we've had a lot of questions come into us just about, hey, how do I know when to hire someone, hiring plans, things like that. So we're just going to talk about it today, and we'll give some of our experiences that we've had. But let's get into a bit of discussion about the week, mate. How has it been? What have you been up to?
Yeah, been pretty good. Been trying to rectify some back issues I've got going on. Getting a bit too old.
It's from carrying 4th Regiment Sports back in the day, mate. Is it?
Yeah, back when I was an athlete. I think once you turn 30, any little niggle turns into a long-term injury. So, yeah, struggling with I've got a couple of bulging discs in my lower back at the moment, so I'm trying to rectify that as we come into the finals for footy in the next couple of weeks. So, but yeah, that's about it really on the sporting side and the personal side, because I've been trying to avoid picking up my kids with a bad back. But anyway, being a shit dad.
Damn, man.
But yeah, otherwise on the business side, same. Trying to we're doing a lot of tests at the moment and trying to plan out the back end of this year and where we can thrive for Teamgate.
Yeah, nice, mate. That's good. I'm not injured and currently just continuing on my goal of the next comp, 1st of December.
Mates just fucking throwing around steel.
Yeah, mate. Getting the pig up. So that's going pretty well at the moment. So excited to get into that 1st of December up at the Gold Coast. So good comp up there. And business-wise, man, I've actually started to see a bit of our organic work start to come into play, getting a lot more discovery calls that are coming in, specifically looking for our virtual labs, which is great.
Nice.
So had a great call this morning at 3:15 a.m., which was awesome. Yeah, so that was a great call. And
should have cracked a breakfast beer, mate.
I should have. I really should have. I should have had a dessert beer, mate.
Should have had a dessert stout.
Yeah, Dub Vegas, mate. Perfect for 3:15 a.m. Beers. No, it was really good day. We had a good discussion around virtual labs, and they found us. They were looking at some of our competitors, had no idea we existed, did a Google search, found us, liked what they saw on the site, booked a discovery call. So for me, that's like a massive win, right? Because we went from being completely unknown to being on the contenders list to fulfill their requirements. So that's really exciting. So just goes to show, organic, it is a excellent means. But yeah, let's talk about learning of the week, buddy.
Yeah, so mine, it kind of ties into what you're saying. I've had a couple of demos this week, and it's just around the importance of personal touch. And, I banged on it about it a lot for Teamgate, who's a smaller business. When we're competing with the likes of, Salesforce and HubSpot, we have to have those differentiators. And that personal touch has really come to bear sort of last couple of weeks, especially with one of the sales calls I had this week is a larger company, looking to scale, and their biggest selling point was we want you to be a partner in this. We don't just want a software. We want you to work with us and make sure we're using this software to our best ability. And it also tied into a personal side of the house. My wife and I are doing our tax returns at the moment, and the accounting firm that we've used the last couple of years have decided to automate their entire process. So instead of going in
what's the point of even paying?
Hours. Yeah, exactly. Instead of going in for a couple of hours and dealing with someone, now it's back.
Tell me how much you've spent on, this. Shut up. Just get me in there.
And it's like 3 weeks between emails. So we're still waiting. We've submitted this stuff over a month ago, and it's becoming pretty frustrating. So they'll probably lose a customer, if not more, I would say, over their recent
I dare say they'll rethink their strategy pretty soon, right? Because Yeah. God, what are they thinking?
And we were recommended to them from a previous accountant we used, because he moved into working solely with businesses. So we went to them, and it was really good. They helped us through some tricky stuff with, we sold a house in the last financial year. So they helped us through all of that. But then this year they've it's completely, correspondence via email, a lot of additional admin that they're making us chase up, which, I'm relatively tax savvy, and I could have done this all myself.
I wonder if they've outsourced it. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if they've cut staff and that's like a profit thing.
No,
where they've
I don't
had to
think
cut
they
staff
have.
and outsource it.
I think that the person we were dealing with was the owner of the firm. She's definitely outsourced it to, I don't know whether she's got junior accountants now or something, but a lot of it's through Xero Ask. I think Xero has a questionnaire functionality. So we just get sent a form on Xero. We have to upload files and answer questions, and then that's it. There's zero personalization, zero back and forth. Yeah. So it's put a bit of a sour taste in our mouth, but good to see it's working on my business side, and not really working for others who have removed that personal touch.
Yeah. And I think people, especially nowadays, people want to, if you're working from home or something like that, you want to go out and do that sort of stuff, where previously it may have been hard to find the time. But yeah,
But
that's a shame.
like previously, you'd walk into a tax agent for the day and you'd spend a couple of hours in there, and then it's done. We've spent longer going back and forth in emails because it's just painful. But anyway,
yeah, it's a pain in the ass.
That's my learning of the week. Keep it personal.
Keep it
There's
personal.
value in it.
Yeah, spot on. My one is I actually went to this week a excellent event by Dubbo Business Chamber. They put that on, sponsored by Taronga, Western Plains Zoo, Qantas, and the Dubbo Regional Council. Is they've got this cool series where they're flying ASX 200 CEOs into Dubbo. So Qantas sponsors a flight, gets them into Dubbo, and then the Regional Council probably puts them in a hotel or whatever, or the zoo does that. And then they come and speak to like business owners in Dubbo for 40 minutes, get asked some questions and things like that. I hate asking a question, so I think I asked like 60% of the questions that were asked that day. It's a really interesting day because the stock market had just crashed. The whole Rex thing that's going on, bonds are. So there's some like really good conversations, especially given that it was the Qantas Link CEO, Rachel Iyenguan.
Rex going under.
Yeah. So she was really, really good, really engaging. You can see why she's a CEO of a company like Qantas Link. She was outstanding. She got up, spoke without any notes. You could tell she had like talking points that she wanted to hit, whether it was well rehearsed or whether it was just something that, they've been drumming on about for so long. But it was a really, really engaging presentation. Didn't go for too long. And she opened up the floor to questions, and she did really well with the questions. And one thing I liked, which is a great tactic, is that she would repeat your name back to you, and it's a good sales tactic, right?
Yeah.
Because the name, like how to win friends and influence people, it's the most important thing. And people go, oh, she knows my name now.
She remember my name.
Yeah. And so
you automatically like her.
Yeah. And so when she repeats the question back, like, Abe, that's a great question. Obviously giving me space to think about the answer that I want to give. And then she gave pretty eloquent answers across the board to everything. And one thing that the mayor of Dubbo actually asked, which it came out a little bit interesting, I would say, but she answered it quite well. But what I would say is that it's really interesting that all the Qantas CEOs are now female, which is, I think it's very rare, an organisation so big such as Qantas, for that to be the case. So Jetstar, Qantas Link and Qantas itself, with the recent changeovers of the head shed, they ended up all being female. And she just said that it was really, really great to see because her answer was really good. She's like, a number of really, really influential and great men have paved the way for us to be in this position, even think about having a female CEO, let alone all three. And so I thought that was a really interesting sort of change in rhetoric around that sort of piece, where she actually said that it was the investment that was made by people who were in positions of power in those staff members to get them to that point. So I think that was really great. I think they were trying to have a dig about like how gender equality changes and things like that. And she really like brought it back down to earth. And it's like, it's literally just, it can happen in any organization. It's just individuals that need to invest in people. That's all it is. And so she did a really good job of that. I asked a question about how Qantas had fallen from grace. They're now 24th in the global airline ranking. So they dropped out of the top 20 for the first time ever.
Stick the knife in.
Yeah, it's just an interesting question, right? And like, what are they going to do because she brought it up, which I thought was really good about a presentation where she actually said, hey, we dropped the ball and we screwed up. We know that and we're trying to fix it. And we got to, like, that takes time. I'd ask you just to trust us. And we're trying to make things better, which I think is really good. She's like, we didn't invest in our fleet enough early on. And when you have an aging fleet, you become, you fall out of those standards, right? Because you naturally, as technology progresses, so do the comforts that are, involved in that. So that was really interesting. She talked about the new fleet that's coming into Qantas. And she also talked a bit about the science, which I never thought about when you implement this new fleet, and also like overall, that it's really interesting now that they're looking at studies around lighting. So how to replicate the light in the time zone that you're traveling to. And so now within the planes, it's got
you and I know a lot about, right? With jet lag. It's all about where you're landing. Sucks. It's all about where you're landing in that time zone, and you want to get your body across.
Yeah. So there's this new fleet. They've got all the lighting set out. So hopefully you'll go to sleep when you need to go to sleep, wake up when you need to. But also they're doing a lot of analysis around the food that they give you. And so you should be eating hearty meals before you go to sleep to try and induce sleep. So they're looking at the makeup of the micronutrients that are going into the food that they're serving you on the plane. Although like airline food is, usually pretty crap, but at least they're thinking about the micronutrients that go into it and trying to make it so it induces sleep more than anything else. So I think that, that was for me really interesting to hear about that science space, about what they're doing there. And their new planes that they're getting for Qantas have breakout areas for economy, which is really cool. So I'm really excited to hopefully one day get onto one of those new bits of kit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, because, we're flying economy, right? And there's just nowhere to escape, and it just sucks. You either awkwardly standing like outside the toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah, outside the toilet, looking like a creep. Yeah, stretching and looking like a weirdo. But now they're going to have like for economy, which is probably the best thing because, for business and stuff like that, that's great. But for people who are just flying cattle class, they're actually going to have, standing room throughout the plane. So, yeah, it's really interesting to hear her talk. Some great points that she brought out. She didn't really want to talk about Rex or Bonza for obvious reasons, doesn't want to speak out of turn with it. But she just said that Qantas is ready if it's required for them to step in. So I think it was like trying to give a bit of a reassurance to people in regional areas that
there'll be some sort of Qantas link or small fleet allocated to that.
Yeah, and she said with the fleet they currently have, they'll be able to cover most of the routes with Rex anyway. It'd just be a stretch. It'd be like a surge.
Nice. And yeah, I did see that. I saw your post on LinkedIn, and I thought it was a really interesting one, and it'd be good to attend something similar up here.
So next one is Empol coming. So
nice.
The next speaker. So, and actually really interestingly, I was listening to a podcast today and they've just got into residential energy. Empol. So they're previously like fuel stations, like gas companies, but I guess now they're looking at getting into residential energy. I wonder if that's like they're seeing the writing on the wall as far as timeline for fossil fuels, for diesel, petrol and stuff like that. And
all those bigger
diversify,
companies are doing. They're well and truly in that space already. They're already like the BHPs and that they're already looking at the resources required for renewables, and they're already starting to acquire that. So, yeah, very interesting. Ask him what he thinks about the Queensland Premier's plan to launch state-owned service petrol stations.
Oh, yeah,
part of his new plea. He's trying to buy.
I reckon it's going to win him votes. I think he's going to win, and
he's a fucking tool. But anyway, 50-cent train rides. That's his other big one.
TikTok is his other big one. He's more popular on TikTok than you are, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's a fucking moron.
He's a Queenslander, mate. What do you expect?
Well, he's going against another Queenslander who I'd rather vote in, to be honest.
All right, that's enough of the politics.
Anyway, what's your quote of the week?
No, I'll go first.
What's yours?
All right, so mine's by the great Frank Slootman. God, I quote him a lot because he just has so many great quotes. But out of his book Amp It Up, he really takes a view that he never would have been as successful as he was if he didn't surround himself with great people. And so this quote is, ultimately, leaders are only as good as the people they surround themselves with. Once you get good at both hiring and firing, you're well on your way to great results and a thriving career. So this is really interesting because he talks about when he went into Snowflake, he brought his crew in with him, so operations and CFO. And so he said, look, yeah, okay, you want me to go work at Snowflake? Fine, but these two will come with me. And they're like, what? And he's like, it's a package deal. They either come or I don't. And they're like, okay then. And they IPO'd, so he must know what he's doing with those two. So definitely, I think this is 100% truth. Like if you've got, and this links in with the episode, if you're hiring people that are going to drag the organization back and going to act like a parachute and slow you down, then they're going to do more harm than good. Just get rid of them. So I think that's the big thing there about hiring the right people, firing the wrong people is where you need to be.
That ties beautifully into my quote of the week, which is by the one and only Jeff Bezos. And it's, I'd rather interview 50 people and not hire a single one than hire the wrong person. And it just, like, I think I mentioned it to you during the week, Abe. I was talking to my physio and he asked what the podcast would be on this week. And I told him it was about hiring. And he said the same thing. He said, it's so important. And obviously hiring differs across different industries, and whether you hire, like physios are probably hiring graduates or recent graduates or established physios. And he said the same thing, like you hire the wrong person culturally, they might be great at their job, but it just has this massive domino effect, right? And you're going to lose, you might lose good staff because of the cultural, bad stuff that you've hired. So it's massive. We've seen it. We've hired and fired, and we'll talk about some of that as we go through today, which we'll jump into now. We're a little bit shorter on time today, so we won't waste any time with.
We're 20 minutes into it. We're talking a lot of smack.
Abe,
please.
So
do we want to get started on the Queensland Premier again? I'm sure you could go for a good 40 minutes on that, mate.
Yeah. We'll talk about hiring premiers, eh?
All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about triggers to hire. And so a lot of people really struggle with this concept of this is really weird, right? Because usually we have to define the topic, but I don't think we really need to define like what hiring is for anyone. But when we look at triggers to hire, right? So a lot of people don't understand about when do I need another employee? What are the signs that I need another employee? But also people often jump the gun too early and start to think, oh, I need to hire someone. But really they could probably just work a little bit harder. And some people just don't understand their budget. So Savan last week, right, talking about bookkeepers.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Are they putting in the extra effort, or are they just like doing your books right? So you really got to run them like an extra employee. But I think we can break the triggers to hire down into, I think, 3 key areas, right? So growth indicators, skill gaps, and workload pressures. There's probably a whole heap more, but we think these are probably the biggest ones. And the first one I want to talk about is growth indicators. So this, for me, seems to be around, you want to plan these into your budget. So in your forecast that you have, you want to say like, great, I want to bring on 30 new clients by the end of the year. What does that mean? I can only service 15 by myself. A hire employee, they can probably only service 10. So maybe I need to hire 2 employees by the end of the year. Okay, well, when do I reach capacity? At this point, great. So if I reach capacity in July, if our growth milestones are on track, I need to hire someone in June to onboard them, get them ready so they can start working efficiently in July. And then the next milestone might be September, where we hit that next growth marker where, great, I've got to hire someone else so they can start taking on workloads. And so this is a really big piece as far as how I like to plan growth. Another way to look at it is not just workloads, but also if you're running a sales organization, one thing that's really good is to understand, okay, well, we want to earn X amount of new revenue every year. So let's just say we want to bring on this year, we're looking at doing $140,000 of new MRR. Great. How many deals do we need to do that? What's our average contract value? Let's just say, for simplistic sake, it's 10,000 MRR, right? So then we know exactly how many deals we need to have to close at that point. And so now we can start to work out, well, if we want to close that amount of deals, we now need to bring in this amount of sales qualified leads. Great. We need to bring in this amount of marketing qualified leads. But hang on, we've got a sales team of 5 people. They can't manage those deals. They're going to be at capacity, or those amount of leads, they're going to be at capacity. So we need to hire 2 more sales staff once we start bringing in the leads that are appropriate for the salespeople to be busy. And I think that's like another key growth indicator that we can look at.
Yeah, I think it's really important to look back, and I think looking back to look forward, but also you mentioned forecasting there, and we've spoken about budgeting, we've spoken about bookkeeping, but it's really important in that forecasting to think about the growth. If you're growing 1% or 2% month over month, at what stage are you going to look to hire, and make sure that's in your budget as well, which we spoke about last week. Growth can be, if you're say Clean Living, right? We've spoken about Clean Living a couple of times in some of the episodes. So cleaning company, if she's working in Bathurst and growing, month over month, that's probably a trigger to, at some stage, she needs to hire in Bathurst. But then I'd say the differentiator is if, some other indicators might be you're looking to move into different areas. So if Clean Living is going to expand from Bathurst into Dubbo, that'll also be a hiring trigger, right? Because she can't be in 2 places at once. So at what point does she need to hire to do that? And the person's probably going to take over Bathurst, and she might run the expansion into Dubbo. But there's probably a difference there between whether you're growing at a certain rate and you need to hire at a certain point because obviously your workload's taken over, or if you're looking to expand into new markets, which is going to be a different type of hire, but still around the same thing. You're still looking to grow, or you're going to grow, and you need that staff to execute that growth. But some other things to consider is budget. We've already spoke about, but can you afford to hire them, and at what point can you afford to hire them? So if you're not there yet, but you're growing percent over percent, a month over month, at what point can you afford to do that hire, and at what point is it worth it? Because you think about diminishing returns, right? And the old adage is like a chef, too many chefs in the kitchen, right? If you're running a kitchen, at what point do you have too many people in there where you're actually losing efficiency? So making sure you're not entering into that hiring too soon before you actually need people and your workload actually requires it. So yeah, I think just be wary of that and understand what those growth indicators are and why you're looking to hire.
Yeah, and I think that's the expansion play there is a really key bit. Often, as a founder, right, if you're running a small business, you need to consider the fact that it may not be profitable to hire someone for that expansion play until a certain point. So you might have to go and start it. So let's just say, Bathurst to Dubbo, right? You've got your crew in Bathurst. It's profitable. Team's running. They know what they're doing. You might say, all right, over to you, team leader in Bathurst. I'm going to Dubbo. Go down to Dubbo, start the business by yourself, build up your book. And then you can be like, great, I'm now booked out. Hire someone. Great, that person's now profitable. Hire someone else. And then you build the team again. And that's how you expand geographically, right? It doesn't just happen. You can't just go in there and expect your books to be full. You got to go in there and build businesses again.
And that's exactly what we did with Teamgate, right? We bought a company that was established in Europe. It had a European team. We wanted to expand to the US, and we ran that expansion. We left the Lithuanians to run Europe, and we pushed that expansion into the US. And once we hit the growth milestones, then we started to hire in the US. Same thing's going to happen if this test takes off in Romania. If we get the signal that's required, I can't speak Romanian, but it might be a hire that's required because of, which leads into the next point, a skills gap, right? I don't speak that language. So I'll probably need to hire someone to run sales, to run support in that area. So, when you lack skills or you lack expertise, or hiring becomes a necessity to maintain that competitiveness, whether it's in a new market or your existing market, like Teamgate moving into Romania, hiring might also be necessary. But if we bring it back to like Mitch as an electrician, right? He does electrical work. If he was to upskill himself to do air conditioners or solar, which is similar to electrical work, but in Australia you actually need additional qualifications, is he going to do that himself, or is he going to hire someone and go into business with a fridge mechanic or someone that can do air conditioning and he does the electrical side of the house? Or is he going to upskill himself or upskill his team? So yeah, it can differ depending on what industry you're in, or whether you're expanding into different industries or different skill sets or different geographics.
Yeah, and I think there's one example that I'll throw out there around skill gaps. Yeah, probably skill gaps, right? Is that when we moved into 5CRM, there was no marketing rep, and there was essentially no marketing that was going on. There was a sales rep was sending out a marketing email to an email list of like 30,000 people and getting marked as spam.
Going to spam.
But at the end of the day, there was no active marketing for, organic, paid, things like that. And so we identified a skill gap, which was, marketing within the organization. And so we went out and found someone to go and do that marketing role. Like when you look at it, could Andrew and I have done it? Yes, but we also had other things we were focused on, like sales, running the business, 2 acquisitions, all that kind of stuff that was going on. So there was a skill gap there that was identified in the organization. And so when you think about it, specific qualifications, yes. For instance, if you're, let's look at like a personal training organization, right? So if you're a personal trainer, you want to start a business, you want to generate more business in your books, and your clients are like, man, I just can't get my diet under control. You're not a qualified nutritionist. So you've got 2 options. You can either go and get a qualification to be a nutritionist. You could just give them advice using I think they're qualified as a PT to just give that advice. Or you can go and get someone to join the team who does nutrition, because then you can expand your offering pretty considerably there. So there's a couple of options that you can follow with that. So when you look at skill gaps, it's definitely important to understand I mentioned before, right? Diminishing returns. Like, yes, you could go get that qualification, but what you're not getting is more hours in the day if there's more business that's being generated. So could Andrew and I have done marketing? Yes. Were there more hours in the day for us to do it? No. Go and hire someone. Similar to a personal trainer, you want to expand a nutrition, like your business into nutrition, you could go to a nutrition course, but do you have the extra hours in the day to actually apply that knowledge and focus on that knowledge and pass it on? Or are you better off focused on, other things within the business? Go and get a nutritionist to join your team, right? It's all about figuring that out. Mitch could probably learn how to install solar, do air cons, but does he have extra hours in the day to do it?
Yeah.
Probably not. So go and hire someone.
And that's the last point, right, that you mentioned is workload pressure. If Mitch is working 60, 80 hours a week, is it worth hiring someone if he's profitable, right? And I think that's the consideration is if you're profitable and you can afford to hire someone and there is signs of burnout or missed deadlines, things like that, your employees are clearly burnt out, it might be time to hire someone. But again, it's that balance of, like us with Vibe Serum, we're profitable, we could afford to hiring a marketing rep. What's the balance there? What's the trade-off? If we don't hire someone, it's you or I doing it, whereas our time is better spent selling or bringing in revenue. So there is a trade-off there between the workload pressure and profit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think organizations really, really suck at workload pressure and identifying it because it's, I think it's like a big problem across the globe, but more often now when you see it, especially with this latest round of layoffs, you see people like, oh, we're getting rid of an entire team. Okay. Well, who's going to do their job? Well, someone will. You are.
AI.
AI, right? And you're like, well, AI is not going to do their job because it's talking to people. And it's like, oh, well, guess I am. So I think it's like, and it's an important point. When you look at workload pressure, there's people often will say, we just need to improve our systems and processes to decrease the inefficiencies in time. And it's like, okay, are you sure that that's actually the problem? Because often, and I think this is important to note just around like hiring triggers, is that you need to be open to the idea of like, hey, maybe trying to increase efficiency isn't the solution to this problem. Maybe you just need more, hands-on to get things done.
Grunt work.
And I think that's a big part that a lot of people don't understand and often gloss over when they think about when they should hire someone is they don't. And it's going to cause more problems down the track because if your staff are overworked, they're, struggling, getting anxious when they wake up in the morning to come to work because they know they just got a mountain of stuff that's waiting for them that they've already missed deadlines for, then do you think they're going to stick around? Hell no. They're probably going to go get a job that pays less, pays the same, maybe pays more, but they're not going to feel that workload pressure. I think that's a big part of it.
And I think it sometimes, especially in small businesses, especially people that start their own small business, they're so used to working themselves to the ground.
Yeah.
That one, they probably don't want to hire. They probably favor profit over bringing on someone to help. Yeah. And, by the time they do hire, it's like, well, I work.
Welcome to 14-hour day, son.
So you should too. Which, it doesn't always work out. But let's jump into the next point, which is the hiring process. So obviously the first part, which you spoke about, is actually understanding your triggers to hire. So, the hiring process, you don't really start it unless you've determined that you need to hire. So we've already spoken about that, so we'll keep moving. But the hiring process itself, generally, you're going to want to start with defining the role. And whether this is goals around what you want that particular person to achieve or what you want that role to achieve, but you need to have a clear definition of the responsibilities and expectations before you actually start that hiring process. Because you could be hiring an electrician. Mitch wants to expand and bring on another electrician. There's a big difference between if you're hiring an electrician to run, commercial job sites on your behalf. So if Mitch is staying at home doing the paperwork and he wants an electrician to run job sites, engage stakeholders, order resources, execute the jobs, versus like an on-call electrician for domestic. Those roles are massively different, right? You still need the same qualifications and probably the same experience, but the job role is going to massively differ. So you need to actually understand why you're hiring. What do you want them to achieve? Whether you put goals around that, but clearly define, what does that day-to-day look like? And what are they going to achieve for your company? Otherwise it's kind of pointless bringing on that person. So that's the first step. Anything you got?
Yeah, I really think this is an important piece to not sell someone on a false dream. I mean, it's often the case that you want to manage people's expectations, right, of what they're going to be doing in the job. And if you sell them this like broad dream of what they're doing and career progression and things like that, but it's clearly not going to be the case once they get into the role, they're going to leave pretty quickly because they're like your goals aren't aligned. So to make sure you don't waste time with it, because there's only the worst thing than going through a hiring process is going through it twice. So you hire someone in for the job, 2 weeks later they say, this isn't for me. And they go, what do you mean it's not for you? And it's like, well, I didn't think it was going to be this hard, or I didn't think there's going to be this many hours. I thought I was going to be sitting in an office when really they're outside doing yard work or something like that, right? Like you need to be very, very clear about what you want to be, because I look at people often have like a one-sided view to the hiring process where they say it's a privilege for you to come and work and get paid by my organization, whether you're a small business or you're a large corporation. Hiring. I reckon large corporations are worse than anyone else, because they're like, it's a privilege to, Deloitte or something. It's a privilege to come work at Deloitte, and you should be asking us for jobs. We shouldn't have to put a job ad, right? Yeah, you're competing in this competitive environment. You need to show that you're going to go the extra mile. Small, like some trades, it's like that as well, where it's very competitive. There's lots of people looking for jobs. Other ones, they'll be like, just give me anyone. I need a day labourer just to do something because I'm out of hands, right?
Look at the military recruiting landscape and how that's changed over the last. When you joined, it was a competition, right? For you to get into Dundroon, it was a competition. You were competing,
it was tough.
and when you went on that officer selection board, it was like 10% would get through, and you were like so ecstatic now.
When you got the letter,
I'm still involved.
Because I remember they sent out a letter.
Yeah,
you got a
letter of offer,
and it's just like, holy shit, I made it. You wouldn't know. You literally,
I'm the 10%.
You'd finish it, and you'd just be like, I don't know.
Did I do good?
I really don't know. Am I going to have like a letter of offer come in a couple of weeks, or is it all done?
And you were visible, like it was clear you were in competition. You were on a selection board with like 10 other people, and they tell you like, hey, 2 of you are going to get an offer. We're the military is now competing in the job market. So we're like, rather than it be a competition for you to get in, now we're competing with other employers and trying to drag people into the military because we need to fill the numbers. So yeah, it's crazy how quick it's changed just in the last,
it comes down
10
to
years ago.
Identity, right? But let's not get into that. But but I think the key bit there is that you need to clearly define this and lay it out clear as day for people about what to expect when they come into the job role. And people can sniff out bullshit from a mile away. If you don't define the role effectively and think about it and be honest with it, when you get into that like interview stage, they're going to know it, and you'll lose good candidates is probably the best way to put it. And that I think is really important. And you want to be able to make sure that you get the right people applying. And so expectations, responsibilities, like not everyone wants to be a leader. Not everyone wants to get out and do yard work. Not everyone wants to sit in an office and complete bookwork. So you need to make sure that all of those things are outlined. I was talking to Liv from Clean Living a week or two ago. She had someone that was working with her, and they were there for like a week, and then they said, this is actually like, I don't like this. I didn't think it was going to be this hard. And then they're like, see you later. Like, that's it. That's the end of the engagement, right? And it's admittedly that happens sometimes, regardless of, what response. Like people just go, oh, that sounds easy enough. Like I could go and mop floors and vacuum and, scrub stuff. I love doing that at home. And then they go out there and they're like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like, it's so much work. It's so much work, right? Like similar to day laborers, like not everyone can do it. But I think the biggest part there is that being clear before starting the hires process sets the expectations for you of what you're looking for someone, because the last thing you want to do is interview a whole heap of candidates that aren't going to be a fit anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the job description. So this one here is really interesting, right? Because a lot of people don't put enough weight on the job description. This is essentially your advertisement to get the right candidates in. And so you really need to spend a lot of time making sure that this portrays your company as somewhere where the people that you want to work at your organization are going to be interested in applying. And I think that's the key bit, right? The people you want to work. So you could put a job ad up there and you'll get 1 million applications because everyone sits on Seek or LinkedIn at jobs or whatever, and it's just like, it's all automated now. So you don't even have to think about it. It's not like you have to walk in and hand in your resume and say, I'd like to work here. You just like submit. And so you'll end up with like 50 spam ones, regardless of what your job description says. But you want the people who are going through and saying, like, going and reading it and saying, this one looks interesting. Read the job description. That's what I want. And so you want to get more of those people in than just you'll get the spammers anyway, but you want to make sure you get the people who actually read into it. And I was looking at it on Seek the other day. When you're posting a job, is that you have the option there. There's a headline. So similar with a Google ad, right? So with a Google ads, you have your headline, your CTA. So you put a headline in there about what the job is. You know, I think it's like 100 characters or something like that. And so you just put in there like this. The whole idea is to get them to open it up, look at the job, and look at the broader job description. And so that's because you get like a very small window on Seek, right? From memory, on the application, it's quite small. And I think on the website, it's quite small as well. So that's like your bit to get someone to click in there. And then when you get into the job description, you need to maintain their attention. If you put like a big block of text that is boring and dull, no one's going to read through all that and decide that they want to submit an application. I found like government organizations are the worst for it. They just have like this vague.
We were established in this year, and this is what we do. Like, this is how great we are. And it's just this long shit that no one wants to read. Until you get to the point, it's like, this is what the ideal candidate looks like. This is the skills that you should have. Like,
qualifications,
this is me.
previous experience.
Yeah.
Just be really upfront. Keep it short and sharp. Succinct is a key. And go and get inspiration from other listings on, Seek, LinkedIn, whatever. Make sure that you call out like key benefits of joining your team. If you have something that stands out from other people, like if you do extra super contributions or your salary is above award rate, like make sure you call that out. And one thing when you're doing the job description, like the job post, put the salary on there, because don't do yourself the disservice of not posting the salary and then thinking that you're going to get all these people that are aligned. Like if you're paying someone a shit wage, be upfront with them and tell them it's going to be a shit wage, and have that discussion once they're in there. And they might say, look, I was really hoping for a lot more, but I liked the opportunity to work here. And it's like, look, maybe let's talk about a plan of how we can get you to your goal salary. But the last thing you want is someone who their expectation is 180K a year, but you're paying 60.
Yeah.
Because you're just wasting your time, and you just get in the interview and they're like, how much are you paying for this role? You're like, 60K a year. They go, I was expecting 180. It's like, well, I just wasted fucking 30 minutes of my time talking to you.
Yeah. And how quick you knock people out with that, being upfront and putting that salary, you're going to get rid of people straight away. Again, you still got to get the spammers, and they'll hit apply now, even if you've got 60 grand in the description and they want 180.
But generally, they're completely unqualified people anyway, and you just look at them and you're like, don't bother.
It gets a bit tricky when you're hiring overseas, like in the US, when we've hired in the past, because the US pays different depending on where you live, depending on all that sort of stuff. So,
don't get me started.
At a minimum, put in a range. Put in a range of what you're looking to pay.
Healthcare benefits, man. Healthcare in the US, like, it is just like, it's complex. And people will be like, oh, what's the benefit scheme? And you're like, I'm an Australian. We have
Medicare and private health.
Private health insurance. So it's pretty straightforward. It's select your own. And they're like, okay. But luckily there's a few cheat sheets that generally they'll provide you. But that's a big thing as well in the US, is that people will take a shitty wage if the benefits are good.
Yeah.
That's like a really, really big thing. So I think that's why it's important when you look at the job description to make sure it's compelling, and make sure you highlight the key benefits of working at the company. Like if they get a company car, right? Like if you're a tradie and you're going to offer them a ute, like, damn, like that's a good deal for a lot of people, right?
Yeah. Work from home. Or flexible working hours, or whatever it is.
And don't bloody lie when you say flexible working arrangements. And you get on the call and they're like, oh, what's flexible to you? And it's like, oh, well, you can work from home on Fridays, It's like, that's not flexible working arrangements,
That's guess where that appears now. Defence Force recruiting website. Flexible working hours is one of the benefits.
You can go field for 4 months
Force.
of the year.
I saw
Flexible
that the other
working
day.
arrangements. You can get told to go to Darwin.
Yeah, I saw it the other day. I said, "That's interesting. Who added that?" Like, oh, you've got flexible options. You're going to move to Townsville or Darwin.
Yeah, or Adelaide now. Or Adelaide. God.
Cool. All right, so we'll keep going, but now we've crafted the job description. Now we've got the ad out there. People start applying. So the next step is actually screening candidates. So effective methods, and Abe, you and I have done hiring and lots of rounds of interviews and things like that. So I think it's important to do, whether it's a screening interview or some sort of short form interview early.
Man,
if you've got
I'm a big fan of the 15-minute speed rounds.
It's like speed dating, right? Just get them in. Have some screening questions that make sure they're actually aligned with the job role. If it's around wages, if it's around, cultural fit, things like that, make sure you have them there. I know LinkedIn has a screening questions function. So for example,
so to Seek as well, you can put screening questions in there.
Yeah. So if you're looking to hire a sales rep, you could have, minimum education requirements or locality requirements. So if someone's applying from bloody
For sales
Brazil,
reps, you probably want maximum education requirements.
Wages, things like that. So make sure you got those screening questions ready to go. And then don't be afraid to do multiple rounds of interviews. Don't go crazy with it. Like I've heard of fucking horror stories where people have done
big organizations,
six rounds
the worst, right?
Of interviews. But, if you do that 15-minute screening round and you get to a short list, obviously if you've got more than one person, you can divide and conquer like Abe and I have done in the past. We've said, hey, I'm going to handle these 50, you handle these 50. We'll come back together with our top 5 each.
I think we just had a round robin, didn't we, on Carnley, and they just got who they got. I feel sorry for the people who got me.
However, and we end up hiring my hire anyways.
Yeah. Okay, so just to break down the 15-minute speed round, you go, oh, okay, 15 minutes. What are you achieving in that? All right, step 1 is outline the hiring process to them and give background on the company. And so you should spend 5 minutes on this and say, hey, Andrew, thanks for joining today. Appreciate it. 15 minutes. I know it's quick, but we like to do these just to make sure you're a fit. Let me tell you about the hiring process that we follow. 15-minute speed round, practical activity, 30-minute interview. After that, offers go out. So this is not going to be a 6-round process. That's why we do the 15 minutes now, and then we'll get into the other stuff later. And they go, okay, that makes people feel good because you're upfront with them about the hiring process. And then after that, it's like, all right, I CEO of Appsembler. Great to meet you. This is what Appsembler's about. This is the job role we're hiring from. You see in the description. Okay, cool. Questions for you. 3 to 4 quick questions that are mainly what you want to find out is if their personality is going to gel with the organization and the type of person they are. So these aren't like, tell me about your job experience. You got a resume. You can go through and look through all that crap. It's like, hey, I saw that you worked at X, Y, and Z. Tell me a little bit more about the most challenging thing that you faced in that organization.
How'd you overcome it?
And you'll get an understanding. Big red flags for me, someone who badmouths their last organization, massive red flag. That was shit. We just didn't get along. They didn't understand. It's like, well, you're obviously a problem. See you later. Those sorts of things, right? So just look out. This is like a red flag spotting activity. So ask questions that are likely to see red flags. If you work in like a physical job, like a manual labor job, and say 15-minute interview, it's like, okay, well, tell me what's the most physically challenging thing you've done. And it's like, oh, my mum made me walk an hour. Okay, well, you're probably not going to be suitable for this outdoor labor job. That's not going to work. And so you just look for those red flags as you go forward. And I like to ask people about sports that they played or, things like that, because I feel like that defines someone's character a lot if they played team or contact sports. Obviously I have, but I have a bias towards it. But it doesn't have to be team sports, but just some sort of physical activity. I think Chase, he talked about rock climbing and his outdoors activity, the marathon that he'd run out, his medals in the background, nicely placed there. That sort of built in for us distilling of like, okay, he's able to go out, look at a goal, achieve a goal, and do hard things. Perfect. Resilience, right?
I also like questions, and I do this a lot when I'm helping out the military recruitment space. Like, do you know what you're signing up for? Like what do you expect from this role? What? And I think the big thing, which we do, is give them time. If you're going to do 15 minutes, allocate 5 minutes for them to ask you questions, because that's where you're going to get the real truth. If they're asking around wage, or if they're asking around work from home, you're going to get those indicators of what they're looking for from the role and whether you're a good fit. Because some people might want strictly work from home. Some people might want big commission if you're talking sales, or big wages.
I actually forgot to mention that is, one of the main points you need to cover off on is like, hey, you saw the salary range is X to X.
What are you expecting?
What do you expect?
Yeah. Be upfront about it.
They say that seems fine, or they might say, oh, I was expecting a little bit more, or they might say, I was hoping we could talk about that because that's too low, and you go, well, that's what we're offering. So
yeah.
So I think it was funny. Like it was someone that we talked to, and we're like, I think it was one of my candidates, and they said, oh yeah, is there any budge on the salary? I was like, no, that's what it's offering. That's all it is. There's nothing more. And they're like, oh, okay, no worries. And we're like, all right, cool, not a fit. Then they emailed afterwards, as like a couple of hours afterwards. They're like, oh, look, maybe we could work with the salary. I think that'll be fine for the time being. It's like they've obviously went back, had to think about it, and gone, oh, this guy's actually serious, that I'm immediately out after this point. But still, it's a red flag for me, because they're not going to be happy in the job, or that first year they're going to ask for a massive raise.
Or they'll be looking elsewhere whilst, this will be a temporary, all right, I can do this job for now while I get some money, and I'm going to keep looking for a higher wage. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. The next one is interview techniques. I know we sort of touched on it a little bit there. It's sort of blended in with the tactics to cut people off. But what I would say is that one thing that I hate before we go into this is not being transparent with people. So if someone doesn't have the job, email them, tell them they don't have the job. If someone's disqualified, tell them on the call and just say, hey, Andrew, look, after this call, I just realized that
we're not proceeding to the next round.
We're not proceeding to the next round. So
don't waste their time.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Because you know what it's like to be left on red. Everyone probably knows what it's like, whether it's, a girl they're prospecting or a boy they're prospecting, and then suddenly they're left on red. That's, I wouldn't know. Wouldn't know, mate, But, that's something there. But one thing that I love when we talk about interview techniques, I am a massive, massive fan of practical tasks. And this was driven by Amazon. Actually, Amazon did it when they were hiring developers. What they would get them to do is they get them to build, the old snake game on a phone. So when they're hiring developers, they'd make them build out the snake game on their phone, for the app. And so they'd say, all right, cool. Yeah, you seem like a pretty good fit. Here's this practical activity. Go build the snake game. And so they'd have to go away, build it, and come back and say, hey, this is what I made. And you could tell like someone who just put the minimal amount of effort in and built like this dodgy app that doesn't really work, or someone who puts a lot of time and effort in, and you go, wow, this person here, they're going the extra mile. And I found it really, really good in the practical tasks, because 50% of the people just wouldn't do it. And they'd be like, screw it, I'm not doing it. You don't want those people anyway. Who cares how good their resume is? Who cares what they say in the interview? If they're not willing to put towards like that extra bit of effort to get the job, then don't waste your time. Don't follow up on them. It's like, hey, we had a Google Doc that we'd send out to everyone and say, we want all the stuff submitted by this date. Book your second follow-up call using this link, and it'd be Andrew and I on the call for the second one. So we do like the 15-minute speed, go through, vet, decide who we're going to give the practical stuff to. We'd issue the practical stuff out, and in that they'd be able to book a call with both Andrew and I so we could get there, and we'd sync up on the candidates as well. So we'd talk about it and say, oh, I really liked how Andrew did X, Y, and Z. Didn't like how Abe did this. This is what I think they're flaky on here. And we talk about it before we go in. So it's a really open process for us. And we actually put in a lot of effort for the hiring process, which is...
And we had two really, really key criteria, right? We had technical fit, so we're hiring sales rep. How good were they at sales? But then our second one was cultural fit. Would they fit in with the team?
Small teams, you can't afford to have someone who's going to be a disruptor in the organization. And you can say like, oh, you don't want a whole heap of people who are just templated to be the same person. It's like, you're absolutely right. But you want personalities that are going to mesh together. You don't want someone who's going to be, aggressive towards other employees. And you mentioned it before where your chiropractor was like, I lost all my good chiropractors because I hired the wrong person. And then they left as well, and they had to go through this whole process again. And I think it's super important to to realize that it's like, it's not about hiring the same people as you. It's about hiring people who are going to mesh with you and your organization.
Yeah, and not everyone, like obviously we were hiring in a sales environment, so we gave them free access to Teamgate, and then we said, after a week, come and sell it to us. How would you sell Teamgate? What are the benefits of Teamgate? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? Not everyone's going to be in a position where they could do a full-on practical activity. We get that. At the minimum, put them in some sort of practical scenario. Question them. Hey, if you were in this position, if you're an electrician, if you're at a client's residence in this position, what would you do? And see what their problem-solving skills are like and how they actually work through solving those problems. Because at the end of the day, you need to trust them with your organization. So definitely test that out. And the last point we kind of already touched is cultural fit. Assessing cultural fit is the big thing. You get a bad egg. Both of our quotes touched on it today. You get a bad egg, it can ruin the team. And for a small business like Teamgate, even if you have a passenger, right? If you have someone that's not willing to put in for the team, you're going to be lagging behind. So when we were assessing cultural fit, it was like, all right, how open are you to learning? How open are you to developing your skills and potentially expanding outside your sales role? Are you willing to, if we identify strengths in you, are you willing to take on leadership roles? Are you willing to learn? And we ended up hiring Chase, who was actually from an industry that wasn't, he was from like a recruitment and things like that. So if we just went off a resume, he probably would have been knocked out on the first round, right? He wouldn't have even been considered in the second round, and he was sort of the dark horse, and he blew us away when he got to that second round and ended up selling Teamgate to us. So cultural fit though is massive, right? So if you've got a certain culture, certain people are going to fit.
I actually remember walking away
aren't.
from the interview with Chase and being like, "Wow, that's really good."
Yeah,
and sort of sitting back and like comparing it to the others and being like, man, you could tell he put time into it, and we talked about gap selling, we talked about everything else, so that really like set the tone, and he came and did it all, and I thought it was really good.
Yeah, and he got the job, and he's still with us and killing it.
And I think the other part there as well about why they left their last job, or if they're still working at their current job, why they want to leave, because this can be a really interesting question and says a lot about the person. As I said, if they start talking crap about their previous employer, red flag straight away. I would be very cautious about hiring someone who badmouths their previous employer, because usually they were the problem. Not all the time, not 100% of the time, but someone who isn't going to cause problems doesn't want to sit there and say, "Oh, we never got paid on time. They were, rude. They didn't give us our time off," like all that kind of stuff. They're just going to say, "Oh, look, I thought it was time for us to part ways. I wanted to chase new opportunities." There's a million other reasons you could give rather than bad mouthing your previous employer. And that's why I say that's a massive red flag. You could have got treated like an absolute piece of shit at your last job. And I would do the same thing. I would never sit there and say how bad a previous employer was. I would simply just say that I'm finding new opportunities or looking for other options.
Yeah. And it leads into the next piece is hiring mistakes to avoid. And I'm going to jump one over here and look at the overemphasis on experience. So with Chase, he wasn't the most experienced candidate. We had people in there that were selling in New York. We had people in there that had all this massive sales experience. But when we looked at, the technical, the practical he blew them away. And then when we balanced that with the cultural fit, he was a great cultural fit. So he ended up winning the job. And if we just went off experience, that's well out. We've also hired in the past people straight from college, and those students, or they'd worked summer jobs as waitresses or bar staff, or that's a great sales skill. If you can, engage people in a bar and sell drinks and do that sort of stuff, that translates really well over to the sales world. So making sure you just give people a chance. Don't knock them out straight away because, their CSV or their resume is not what you expected. And that's where the practical activities help. If you can get them to do a practical activity, it doesn't really matter about their experience. You and I, we don't have MBAs. We're currently CEOs of companies. If we were looked at just based on our CV, we wouldn't be where we are currently. So give people a chance, go through the practical activities. The job history, like we said with Chase and the other examples, it doesn't tell the full picture. So, they might have bounced around jobs, but if you actually ask them, like, oh, talk to me about your job history. Oh, yeah, my dad got really sick, so we moved from this place to this place. I haven't worked in 2 years because I've been looking after my dad. That's an example we've been given in the past. But if you only took that at face value and looked at their job history, it's like, okay, this person hasn't worked in 2 years. What's their motivate? Like they're unmotivated. But if you dig that little bit deeper, you'll actually see the true history.
And I think another key bit there is that giving people a chance, I think, is a great way to look at it, because when people bring experience, they also bring bad experience. And so I liken this to the fact that someone has potentially been taught the wrong thing. And so they bring those biases in with them, and they bring those perceptions about what's right, which may not be the way you want to do things. At least when you're getting someone with a clean slate, you don't have to worry about those wrong teachings that have previously been had in the past. So for me, I think this is a really important piece. And I'd rather hire someone, and you got to accept as well that if you're offering a low salary, you're probably not going to get the really experienced person.
Yeah.
So just think about that when you go in there. But I think you do your initial check off the CVs. But this is where the 15-minute speed round is really effective, because you can essentially do double the interviews than if you had that 30-minute first one. And so I would be like, doesn't look too bad. Take a chance, move them across and have a look at them.
Yeah, for sure. And that comes into one of the other mistakes is rushing the process. If you need to hire in September, start, in July. Start that process
hire
early.
Slow, fire fast.
Yeah, hire slow, fire fast. Take your time, make sure you hire the right person. And then, if you've got, regardless of whether it's the new hire or old employees, fire fast. Don't, delay ripping that Band-Aid off and getting rid of someone who's a bad fit, because at the end of the day, you're probably still going to get rid of them. You're just going to pay them for another couple of months and delay that and kick that can.
Every
down
time
the road.
I've had to fire someone, I've never sat back and said, I should have given them more time. No. I've always sat back and said, I should have fired them 3 months ago.
Yeah. 100%.
That's always the case. And you sit there and you go, what the hell was I doing? Like, oh God, why did I take so long to come up with this decision?
Yeah.
But it sort of leads into the next one, right? Ignoring red flags. Because especially when we have current employees, we'll ignore red flags that are out there because we just, they're all right. They're probably they're having a bit of a downtime. We'll be okay. But really, you should have got rid of them. But during the interview, take notes. Don't breeze over that comment that you thought was a bit weird. Take note of it and think about it a little bit more deeply, and potentially just try and unpick that a little bit, because that could be the beginning of something where it's a lot worse. And one thing that I found was really good about when we'd meet up for those 30-minute interviews, we both had prospects that we brought in that we thought were okay or good, or, we were looking at top candidates, and you get a minute and the other one's like, they were shit. And you're like, what do you mean they were shit? And you have blind spots, right? And this is the thing. You have this blind spot, and someone sits in your blind spot and you just go, and it's not until you say, they said this, this, and this, and you go, oh, actually, they were shit. And you just look back and you go, God, what's it doing?
Yeah. Well, when you interview so many people, you're like, it just becomes this mundane thing where it's like,
and then you're like, I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, this person's like, they may have just stood out by doing one tiny thing. You're like, oh, this person was really good. And then if you go back and rewatch it, you're like, what the hell? And probably a thing that we didn't cover on is have a process in place. So I think we use Notion. Just use, there'll be free tools out there you can use where
Google Sheets, whatever.
Just have a list of the people that you're interviewing. Have some criteria in there, like whether it's out of 5. Give them a score out of 5 for technical fit and for cultural fit. And then if you've got a tool, if you're doing the interviews on Zoom, if you can get some sort of video recording and get someone else to run their eyes over it, whether it's your wife or husband, hey, I interviewed these 3 people today. Do you want to check out the interview and what do you think about them? Do you think they're a good fit, a bad fit? Which was the benefit of going through the interview process, with Abe and I. So there's some
find a trusted advisor to talk through it with.
Some mistakes to avoid. And the final piece as we start to wrap up here is the labour market is a little bit tight at the moment. There is a
It's loosening, but I think it's important to say,
but
like, you never have a problem hiring anyone when it's a loose labour market, right?
Yeah,
but in a tight. So we can speak on this because we were trying to hire people in the COVID boom of jobs, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone was hiring. Like, you try and hire a developer there, they're like, $300K USD minimum. And you're like, what do you mean? You know, that sort of stuff was getting around, and it was very, very hard to hire people. So I think it's an important piece to look at because you never know when the next boom is going to come along, right? Loose labour market, great. You'll get all these people looking for jobs. You can offer them, you know, no money at all, and they'll be fine with it. But in a tight labour market, man, attracting like top talent or talent in general is hard. Like, man, we had some people who were absolute rubbish asking for ridiculous salaries, and they probably got it somewhere else. They probably got it somewhere else, but they weren't getting it with us. That's for damn sure. And I think the biggest thing there is people will go with your company because your hiring process is honest and upfront. And then they get the sense of that's how this organization is going to treat me as an employee. And so that's why I say it's really, really important to understand clearly in your mind about what you want out of an employee. Because when you start to go through these interview processes, if you're not clear in that space, people will sense it. And then suddenly it's like, okay, there's a few red flags as someone who's looking for a job here. So make sure that you influence things is going to look at their willingness to sell. Now, if you want people who are solely motivated by money, then you got to offer a good pay packet. If you want people who enjoy a good, you know, work-life balance, want a good job environment, like a bit of banner, fit the culture of the company, then you just need to figure out ways you can show that in that interview process and say, like, hey, we're a very inclusive organization. This is what we want to do. This is, you know, this is how we operate. We'll give you a lot of rope. You'll get a lot of freedom. And they'll be like, oh, hell yeah, I love that. But performance will also be monitored. So we don't just want to give you freedom without checks and balances. And they're like, yeah, completely understand. Love that competitive environment, structured environment. I get to do my own thing. So just make sure that you're honest and upfront with that.
Yeah. And you'll see if they want to buy into what you're selling. You can't do that if you're not upfront about what you're doing. Like, we were very honest. Hey, you're going to be joining, like, we're not a startup, but it's going to be a startup environment. It's going to be scrappy. We're going to be going after the big names. It's going to be guerrilla warfare, like guerrilla marketing. We're going to be competing with everyone. Every new customer is going to be a battle to win. And, you know, as part of that, yes, that it's going to be harder work, but the benefits is you're going to get exposure as a sales rep to marketing, to leadership, to operations. You're going to get, you know, all these new skills and opportunities to promote internally and do that sort of stuff. So it's really key to be upfront, because if you're not, you're going to be selling them this dream that, you know, once they start, they're like, well, this isn't what I signed up for, and then they're going to leave. Retention as a hiring strategy, this is massive, something that the military needs to learn, but it costs a lot less to keep someone than it does to hire someone, right? It is a lot easier to retrain someone, and I'll caveat, if they're a cultural fit, than it is to go through the time and effort of hiring someone else. So if you can afford them, you know, whether they've stumbled or whatever it is, there is potential there to retrain them and keep them. But in saying that, as we said before, we've never personally been in the position where we've said, oh, I really regret firing that person, or, you know, I should have given them longer. So don't kick the can down the road.
I think retention as a hiring strategy is a great point. And often when someone tells you I'm quitting, it's too late. Yeah. It's like, it's EPS, like EMPS, right? Employee Net Promoter Score, and getting the feedback, talking to your employees, have regular one-on-ones, looking for the signs of like, yeah, it looks like they're job hunting, or I think they're going to go, and just understanding them. And I think that's where the military really sucks about that case. You'd be like, oh, great. For instance, someone says, I want to post to Sydney because it's going to be close to my family. They're like, Sydney isn't a priority posting. And it's like, okay, but I want to be close to my family in Sydney for stability for my wife and kids. Yeah, look, Sydney's not a priority. You can go to Darwin, though. And you're like, well, I'm going to leave if you send me to Darwin. You're like, oh, okay.
This sounds similar.
Send you to Darwin.
Sounds familiar.
And you're like, well, I'm just going to leave. And then, like, it's the classic story of the army, right? Because they're like, oh, well, I've got a priority to fill. And it's like, yeah, but you're still not going to fill it anyway if I'm not there.
Yeah, if I'm gone, you still need to fill it.
Well, we're going to call you bluff.
They need to fill two spots.
Yeah, exactly it. And it's like, you might have gone to Sydney for 2 years and then took a Darwin posting, or gone to the next priority, right? Like, And I think, I like to think that the Army's getting smarter about it. I'm not really 100% sure, but they're not. I think it's, when you look at it that sense, if someone says like, hey, I don't want to be an SDR anymore, I want to move into another job role. If the opportunity's there, potentially there's an option to do it. If they think they're suitable, there's probably an option to do it. But just think about that as far as retention. And then the last point there is talking about benefits, right? And for me, it's, big in the US, the benefits piece, but also in Australia, there's things you can do like above award wages if you wanted to, working from home if you can offer it. Company get-togethers is a big one. Like tradies do it really well, where every Friday at lunchtime they're in the pub smashing beers and a cannery into their face. Like that builds a camaraderie and builds that togetherness that you get from it. So just think about how you can provide those benefits, perks, and things like that come with it.
Yeah, and I think outside the box as well. Like you and I, in the last 12 months or so, have both been offered jobs back in the military. I don't know about you, but they could offer me $100,000 more than the wage I'm on now, and I wouldn't take it. And it's got nothing to do with financials. It's to do with that family stability. It's to do with even my working hours. I don't know if I could go from what we do now, working 4 a.m. till around just past lunch, going back to a 9 to 5, because starting early, finishing early is so good for family life, because now I can do school pickups. I can, we've got the afternoon to go to the beach. We can do that sort of stuff. So and to understand that, you need to understand who you're hiring. And that only happens with a conversation. What is valuable to them? Where are they at in their life? Do they value money over family? Like what is it? And be flexible with what you're offering.
Yeah, absolutely. And two-way communication is free. I think the most important thing that we look at here is that the hiring process is a two-way process. It's as much as you selling the opportunity. This is how you get great employees, right? You sell the opportunity to work at your company with you and the culture that you've built, but you also need them to sell themselves as someone that should be working there. So don't just think of like, you need to sell yourself. You need to tell me why you need to be here. You need to say, well, this is why I think you should want to be here. Sell the company as well, I think is a big piece. But that's it for today on hiring. If you have any questions about hiring or concerns or want to hear more about our process that we follow, or any tips, interview questions, things like that, hit up Andrew and I, or hit us up on Instagram. But like and subscribe to all the socials, Beers and Business Pod, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and we're on the Spotify podcast and Apple Podcasts as well. Submit questions, topics, guests. We're thinking about running a campaign to ask people for beer recommendations, so think about that as well. But podcast is out weekly, 10 a.m. on Tuesdays, Australian time, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and tune in to the next one, which is really exciting because we've got Celeste coming from Gap Selling. So for anyone who's in sales, this one is for you. For anyone who sells anything, this one is for you. So tune in next week, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Cheers.
See you then. Cheers.